So, David Dobrick is avoiding apologizing or even acknowledging his essay controversy that continues to bubble up under the oceanic trench of YouTube. Classic. Why is he doing this? Is he pursuing a good media strategy or a bad media strategy? Your favorite independent New York City journalist breaks down the situation and explains why David Dobrick is doing what he's doing. There are always reasons. I'm going to reveal them to you. Back to David. What is he doing, right? Because he's no dummy. To briefly fill in anyone who's watching who is not aware of the situation, famous YouTuber David Dobrick contrived a situation where a man named Seth was going to get kissed and touched by an older man whom Seth did not consent to be kissed and touched by. So why is David ignoring the vlogs where he set up Seth to be SA? Because despite what we talked about in the Chris D'Elia video, silence is the best opening position in a battle for public opinion if you understand social media and news cycles on a very deep level, which David Dobrick understands. Foolish to underestimate David Dobrick's ability to control narratives on social media. David Dobrick is very good at this. He wouldn't be David Dobrick if he was not good at controlling people and narratives. Psych IRL is a smart channel, and in a crisis, the goal is to control the narrative at all costs. Now, part of controlling a narrative is getting other people to push back for you, which David has already started marshalling as of yesterday. Scotty Sire, a recurring character in David's LA circus, made a video out of nowhere challenging Seth's narrative of events and using Putin whataboutism to degrade Seth's character as a witness.
First of all, David's a great person. Jason's a great person. In fact, they're both fantastic people. David doesn't have a mean bone in his body. He's so nice. But what you're doing is fucked up, Seth. Also, you posted revenge porn of our friend Erin. Do you know how that's affected her?
Seth may be an evil, sick person himself, who knows, but it doesn't make the SA situation any less true or real. This is a calculated play to counter the narrative, muddy the facts, divide the audience. Bringing up this reverse accusation against Seth.
The lies you've been spreading are unforgivable and you should face repercussions. I was there. In retaliation for this, years later, you post our friend's naked body on the internet? It's revenge porn.
Makes Seth a less sympathetic victim, and a less sympathetic person is less believable. If we think Scotty did not make that video without the assistance and approval of David behind the scenes, we are fooling ourselves. Look at the title of the video. It's simply Hi. There is deliberately no mention of David's name, Seth's name, or the essay controversy. Why? Precisely to keep it off search engines and algorithms and only accessible to viewers who already understand the context and want to know more about the story. That choice of title is as deliberate and calculated as Scotty magically having text between Seth and David.
Through his text messages and found one of Seth's numbers, asking him to do the kissing prank a third time. Seth literally requested to do it.
It's smart. It's very smart. So if silence can keep a negative narrative suppressed, then it works. But as soon as it doesn't, as soon as it, say, starts to trend on Twitter, it's time to pivot very fast. When staying silent, you have to watch your controversy like a retail investor on Wall Street bets who just YOLO'd all his money. Am I up? Am I up? Am I up or down? Up or down? Up or... 60 grand margin call on my SPY puts. Hi, Grandma? Listen. The second reason for David or any celebrity to ignore serious but non-viral accusations and merely observe at first is because it theoretically allows David to do his own due diligence. What do I mean by this? It means, okay, Seth is upset and willing to speak publicly. Is there anyone else in the woodwork David should prepare to deal with that may come out and speak publicly in the future for similar action? Particularly that could weaken his apology if and when he were to acknowledge he hurt Seth, only to encourage 4 more people to come out on Twitter an hour later with their own stories, thus not defeating the crisis, but amplifying it. I'm not excusing David. I'm explaining the cold calculations people make to save their reputations and brands they've built that generate them a lot of money. David Dobrick is a safe brand. There are a lot of people who are financially incentivized to keep David Dobrick a safe brand. It's not just David. But don't worry, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards smacking David. David Dobrick will inevitably offer an apology. Sort of. It will be a two-pronged apology, and his friend Jason Nash is gonna die on his clout sword in front of David like Publius Verus in the Teutoburg forest. Particularly, David already has Scotty out there doing field work for him.
You can tell by his reaction at the end of the video that he was pranked. It was all in good fun.
Which leads us to the next question everybody wants to know, which is how is David Dobrick able to get away with ignoring what many people feel is an important issue for so long? After all, it's been weeks since Seth and Big Nick came out and shared their stories on the H3 podcast, and a clip emerged with David all but admitting the nefarious and racial undertones of the prank.
That's from Compton, so it's like the perfect...
At least straight dudes kissing
It's literally
straight
the
dudes.
perfect setup. Like, a guy from Compton.
And several news outlets have covered the essay controversy. The short answer is that's not enough. The controversy has to enter the ear of advertisers and overpower the sound of money they hear when working with someone. And often that sound is very loud. A good metric for this occurring is when a celebrity's name starts trending nationally on Twitter. And David's name ain't trending on Twitter. His new app is trending on Twitter, but he's not. Narratives are a size of scale. Like celestial planets, their power comes from their mass. And David's social media mass is far larger than H3's or Philip DeFranco's. But what PR teams have a troubling habit of forgetting is that internet narratives are like snowballs, not thunderstorms. They don't arrive and leave. They start small and pick up traction, slowly rolling forward, growing larger and larger and larger and larger. The internet allows the lifespan of a controversy to extend way longer than before. If we were to graph the average lifespan of controversies like humans, then the internet would be like antibiotics. Pre-internet, most controversies died in the cradle. Post-internet, controversies can lurk like a tumor, growing slowly for months if left unaddressed. And David Dobrick has chosen not to address it publicly so far, which is fine because, as we discussed, he has a large social media mass, and there's a strong economic incentive to stay silent. After all, if you don't acknowledge it, then you can create a reality where it doesn't exist. On the other hand, what David has stupidly appeared not to do as well is not acknowledge it privately. During his H3 interview, Seth alleged that he tried to reach out to David and nobody picked up the phone, and as far as I'm aware, nobody has reached out to Seth post-H3 interview to try to quietly settle and patch up the matter. If Seth and David worked it out over the phone privately, and then Seth just tweeted, "We all good now?" it would kill the controversy. There would be closure to the story. Humans crave closure to narratives and stories, and we tell ourselves stories in order to live, as the great reporter and human observer Joan Didion would say. But without a retraction from Seth, or a response from David, there continues to be no conclusion to the essay story. And the perception then becomes that David is now refusing to answer people's questions because he's afraid. And when the public feels like David is ignoring them out of fear, the voices will grow louder and louder and louder. Humans smell fear like sharks with blood in the water. But now we need to talk about the second half of this David Dobrik-Seth essay controversy that is offering partial protection to David. The truth is complicated. The truth is he's once removed from the crime. So the direct link to why it's David's fault isn't as simple as, oh look, he did bad thing on video, punish him. I'm not saying David isn't responsible, but the actual narrative is David created an environment that coerced and incentivized bullying and essay to occur, but did not partake in it himself. If Seth and Corinna and Nick were all on David's payroll, it would be a hostile work environment and an open and closed lawsuit. But parsing David's responsibility and his responsibility for others' actions in his immediate orbit are more difficult to label and fact check. That makes media outlets more cautious and slow to report it. And Scotty makes one good point here.
You, Ethan, take what they said and say, oh, that's so fucked up. So they did this. You would take their words and you would make it sound even worse than what they said.
It's easy to have one voice and one narrative speak on your outlet only, and even reformat their words to make the narrative sound worse.
So you're saying that by and large, women, but you're
Yes.
saying, so you're saying women, so you're saying give people equality of...
No, I'm not saying that.
But in order to be fair, a reasonable, transparent effort should be made to get people with authority to push back. Has Ethan of H3 done that? I don't know. After all, David didn't physically essay anyone. It was Jason Nash. Which brings me to Jason Nash. It's a cold world out here. As the chorus of voices grow louder and louder, and after his team has finished vetting the last 4 or 5 years of his work to make sure there are not additional surprises or victims that may come forward if and when David offers an apology, that's what his team is doing in the background, by the way, right now while David remains silent. They are combing over his back catalog of work to make sure that his apology does not trigger a nuclear fission of apology, accusations, apologies, accusations, an endless spiral and PR nightmare. Anyway, once David is confident that nobody else will come forward because 1, there is nobody else, 2, that bought them off, or 3, David and his team have legitimately patched it up. When David is reasonably confident of that fact, David will apologize for his reckless youth, blame the older people around him for not keeping him responsible, and then throw the spotlight to Jason Nash to die in front of. After all, Jason is an older man who deliberately made out with and essayed Seth without his consent. It's much easier to redirect the surge of anger towards Jason and let it rush past David after he's paid lip service to classic youthful indiscretion. So there we go. We learned why David is staying silent and why celebrities often choose to do so. It's often in their immediate positional interest to stay silent. We also understand it's better to control the narrative and choose how and when to respond, which David will inevitably do and is doing so right now through Scotty.
David doesn't have a mean bone in his body. He's so nice. When someone does something that really upsets him, he gets disappointed instead of angry and be like, why'd you do that? That's not cool, dude.
But third, the only way he can safely maneuver the narrative is onto Jason and close his long-term exposure. Media controversies are battles of public opinion. No different than a court fight or a street fight, smart people learn the rules and the weak points and use them to their advantage. This is why it's so important to have media training and tactical and positional understanding of news cycles and reporters. It's why I want to continue to make videos like this. And if you would like me to as well, please support me on Patreon. It keeps this channel alive. I could not do it without you guys. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe. See you guys in the next video. Bye.